Today I'm making this really easy bread machine recipe. This is almond poppy seed yeast bread and it is delicious. To get started on our almond poppy seed bread, I'm going to start with 1 cup of warm milk. You want this milk to be about 100 to 110 degrees. That'll be good to activate our yeast. Now I just popped this in the microwave for about a minute and that took care of it. So 1 cup of warm milk. Now this almond poppy seed bread is a light, barely sweet bread. Nothing like a sweet cake-like quick bread, but it's a very, very good bread. It's very fun to make using your bread machine. So I love this recipe. Now to our milk, we're gonna add 3 tablespoons of melted butter. This is my really cool Lodge cast iron melting pot. I just put 3 tablespoons of butter in this, popped it on the stove top, and in about a minute, it was all melted and wonderful. So I love this handy little kitchen tool. So this is 3 tablespoons of melted butter. I normally use salted butter. I really use whatever's on sale, but this is salted butter, but you can go unsalted or salted either way for this recipe. Next, we want some sugar. So I'm just gonna use 1/3 cup of this white granulated sugar. I'm gonna put that right on in there. Now I'm going to leave the recipe down in the description. There'll be a link for the printable recipe, and I'll leave this recipe in cups and spoons and also in grams, just depending on how you like to make it. So that'll be down in the description. Now after our sugar, we're going to add 1 large egg. So just go ahead and throw that right on into your bread machine loaf pan. You don't have to scramble it up, mix it up. Your bread machine will do that for you. Now I'm going to add some almond extract. Now, like I said, this is a barely sweet bread, but this just makes it taste really, really good. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of this almond extract. Oh, I love almond extract. Doesn't it just make everything taste so good? Now it's time for the poppy seeds. Now, this is kind of to taste. I usually add 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of poppy seeds. Aren't these cute measuring spoons? I just added a heap of love. There's also a pinch of joy, a dash of tenderness, and a spoonful of affection. I just think that's so cute. So today I'm gonna do 1.5 tablespoons, more or less, of poppy seeds. Next we want some salt. I really love to use this Redmond's Real Salt in my baking. I really like this stuff. This is ancient fine sea salt. Mined in North America, it's from Utah. So I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of this ancient fine sea salt. Now I'm getting pretty low on it, but I keep lots of this in my food storage, so I have some just down in my basement. So I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of this salt, and I'm gonna pour it not over my bread loaf pan, just in case I over pour it. You see what a pretty color it is? It's almost pink. It's almost like the pink Himalayan sea salt. Isn't that beautiful? So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of this salt. I'm just going to put it right on in there with everything else. Next, we want some oats. Now, I store oats in my food storage. I store big 5-gallon buckets of oats, and I also store them in these glass jars, and I just seal them up with my food saver. So I like to keep them in my pantry like this. Now you can use old-fashioned oats or you can use quick oats, either one that you want for this recipe. I mainly store quick oats in my food storage, so that's mainly what I use. So I'm using quick oats, and we're gonna use 1/2 cup of these oats. And this will just give this bread a really great texture. Just go ahead and put that right on into your bread machine loaf pan. And next we want some flour. So I'm gonna use 2 2/3 cups of flour. Now you can use bread flour or you can use all-purpose flour, either one that you want. Today I'm just using some all-purpose flour. This bread really turns out great either way, and I have a bunch of all-purpose flour to use up, so that's what I'm gonna do. So 2 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour. And last, I'm gonna add the yeast. Now normally I use Bella Rise instant yeast, but today I'm gonna use this SAF instant yeast. I just ran out of my package of Bella Rise instant yeast, and I always store my yeast in the freezer, and I've had this in the freezer for several years. If you look on the back, it actually expired about 3 years ago, but I stored it in the freezer and it stays good forever like that. So I definitely recommend that you keep your yeast in the freezer. So for this recipe, we're gonna use 2 1/4 teaspoons of this instant yeast. Now you can also use rapid rise, active dry, whatever kind of yeast you want to use. But for this recipe, I always tend to use my instant yeast. So 2 1/4 teaspoons. Now, if you buy those little packs of yeast, then that'll be 1 little packet. But it's definitely more economical to buy your yeast in 1 pound or 2 pound packages like this. Okay, these are all of our ingredients. Now, another thing that you can do is you can also add about 1/4 cup of slivered almonds. That makes this recipe so good. But you know what? This is real life baking for me, and I am baking for my family. And my kids don't like this bread with any slivered almonds. So I'm gonna leave those out. But if you wanna add those, it's delicious that way. Add them at your mix-in signal. Don't add them yet because you wanna give your bread some time for the gluten to develop. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in my bread machine. This is my Zojireshi bread machine that I absolutely love. This is the Home Bakery Supreme, and I've had this for a long time, and it's really dirty, and I use it all the time. So I don't even mind that you see how dirty it is. This thing really gets used practically daily. Now, if you want to use your bread machine to totally make this bread, then just choose a basic white cycle, choose a light, medium, or dark crust, and press start. But for me today, I'm going to use the dough cycle. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to select the dough cycle. And it takes about 1.5 hours, and I'm going to press start. And the process is going to be the same. I'm just going to take out my dough at the end of 1.5 hours when the dough cycle's over, shape it into a loaf, and then I'm going to bake it in the oven. So that's what I prefer to do, but you can do it either way. Because I have my preheat turned off, my machine starts kneading it instantly. And I'm gonna let this go just about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna check on my ball of dough. That is such an important thing to do. So my bread machine has been going just for a couple minutes. I'm gonna come in with a rubber spatula and kind of help all of this flour and all the ingredients that are stuck to the sides of the bread machine. I'm gonna get those off and let them incorporate into my ball of dough. Now that I've given my ball of dough a few minutes to mix up and get all of the ingredients incorporated, I'm checking on it. Now, it is way too wet. You see on the bottom how the dough is sticking to the bottom, sticking to the sides, sticking to the paddles. So I know that I need to add a little bit more flour. And this is just an important thing to do every time you make bread, whether you're using your bread machine or a mixer, you just have to check on your ball of dough. Now, I'm gonna add about 1/8 of a cup more flour, and I'm gonna give this a few more minutes to mix up, and I'll check on it again. I've given my bread machine a few minutes to incorporate all that extra flour that I added, and look how much better this ball of dough looks. It's not too wet anymore. It's not sticking to the sides or to the bottom or to the paddles. It's looking fantastic. So this is what you want your ball of dough to look like. You can touch it. It's tacky, but not sticky. So it's not too wet. It's not too dry. If yours is looking dry and crumbly, add some water. Add about a tablespoon of water and let it mix up. You want it to look like this. If yours is still a little bit too wet, add that flour and make it look like this. But now that we've checked on our ball of dough, that is so important when you're using your bread machine, then you can go ahead and shut the door and know that your bread is going to turn out fantastic. It's been 1.5 hours and the dough cycle is complete. Oh my goodness, look at the dough for our almond poppy seed yeast bread. That looks fantastic. It rose so well. Now it's time to take it out, punch it down, and shape it into a loaf. I wanted to show you my 2 sizes that I have in my cast iron loaf pans. This is an 8.5 by 4.5, and this is a 10 by 5. Now I use this big one when I make 2-pound loaves. This is what I use. And when I make 1 or 1.5 pound loaves, this is what I use. So today I made a 1.5 pound loaf. So I'm going to use this smaller loaf pan. Now down in the description, I'm going to leave you the printable recipe that has the recipes for a 1-pound loaf, a 1.5 pound loaf, and a 2-pound loaf. So today I made the 1.5 pound loaf, so I'm going to use this 8.5 by 4.5 size loaf pan. So now it's time. Isn't this dough beautiful? I love this. Okay, it's time to turn it out of this bread machine loaf pan, and we're going to press it out really well. Press it out, get all those little air bubbles out of it, press it down flat, and then it's time to shape it into a loaf. So I like to press it out about as wide as my loaf pan is long. Now, if you'll see inside my loaf pan, it's nice and shiny. I poured about a tablespoon of olive oil in there, and I just rubbed it all around, and so it is ready for the dough to go right on into, and it'll slide right on out when it's done baking. Okay, this is pressed out well. Now, you can do this any way you want. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can just roll it into a loaf, into a nice log if you want to. Sometimes I like to do the head down, shoulders in method, where you bring the head down, you bring in the shoulders, and then you press that out with the palms of your hand. And then you just continue to roll it into a nice, tight loaf. This will give you really good surface tension, give you a really pretty loaf of bread. And you won't get any of those air pockets or anything like that in there. So once you have it rolled up, just kind of pinch the ends together, flip it over, pinch those seams so that it doesn't burst or anything like that while it's baking. Pat it all together, kind of throw it around a little bit, pat it out, and that looks perfect. Don't these poppy seeds look so good in this loaf? It smells really good too. I can smell the almond. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and plop this into my loaf pan. You don't need to be gentle with your dough at all. And this looks great. I'm gonna cover this up with some saran wrap, and I'm gonna let it rise on my countertop just like this. It'll be anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes, most likely. And I just want it to rise above the edge of the loaf pan. And I will show it to you when it gets there. In just a few minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and get my oven preheating to 350 degrees so I can just throw this on in when it's ready. The dough for my almond poppy seed yeast bread has been rising in the loaf pan for about 30 minutes, and it's looking really good. It actually rose a little bit more than I intended it to, but this is gonna work great. So you want it to look about like this, maybe even risen a little bit less. Now I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in there and let it bake for 30 minutes. My almond poppy seed bread just came out of the oven. We made this loaf using the bread machine dough cycle and baked it in the oven, and isn't it gorgeous? Now honestly, this one got a little bit huge. And that's just because I let it rise a little bit too long before putting it in the oven. This size, I probably should have made it in my bigger 10 by 5 loaf pan, but you know what? This looks great to me. So it's time to turn it out of the loaf pan. I let this bake for 30 minutes, and I like getting it out of my loaf pan immediately. All right, it's nice and hot. Okay, let's check out this loaf. Look how gorgeous it is. One of the benefits of using the dough cycle and baking in the oven is that you don't get the little holes in the bottom from the bread machine, and you also just get this more traditional looking loaf. I really like the style of this loaf a little bit better, but it looks fantastic. Okay, this is what I like to do. After I get my loaf out of the loaf pan, I like to brush it with some butter. So I have my cast iron melting pot. I melted just a little bit of butter in here, less than a tablespoon, and I'm just gonna brush this onto my loaf. This will just give you that pretty shine. It'll make your bread have that yummy buttery flavor, and it'll give you a softer crust. And I love soft crust for my bread. Now, after you brush your butter on, you can either put this on a cooling rack to cool for a little bit, or what I do is I like to cover it with a tea towel and just let all that warmth and the condensation give me an even softer crust. And I'll let this cool just for a little bit, and then I'm gonna cut into it. Now, a lot of people say let your bread totally cool before you cut into it. That'll give you the best crumble texture for your bread, and it'll be easier to slice that way. But after you put all the work into making bread, I like to eat nice, warm bread straight out of the oven. So I'm just gonna let this cool just for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna cut into it and try a little slice. All right, I've let this bread cool a few more minutes, and I am ready to slice into it and check it out. This bread smells so good. It's just a really fun bread machine recipe to make because it's so different. Look how good that looks. I love the poppy seeds all throughout it. The crumb looks great. The texture looks fantastic. This one is still nice and warm, but like I said, I am not gonna wait. I made homemade bread, and I am gonna enjoy it nice and warm like I like it. This bread has a really great texture. It's so soft. Oh, this looks fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna take a little bite. This bread is so good. It just has a hint of that almond flavor. You can really taste the poppy seeds, and it's just a really fun and different bread recipe. I'll leave the printable recipe down in the description and also a link to our handmade beeswax bread bags. You can find those on robinonthefarm.com. Thanks so much for being here with me on Robin on the Farm. I'll see you next time.
Robin's in the kitchen, dough beneath her hands, wheat from the fields and eggs from her land. Sunlight through the window, a warm golden glow. She's working hard to make that dough. With flour on her apron,